When Zainab bent down to retrieve the fallen cowrie shells that morning at the village market, she saw something that made her blood turn cold. There, beneath the trader's mat, partially hidden by woven baskets and clay pots, was a leather pouch that pulsed with its own dark light. And inside that pouch, she glimpsed something that should not exist. Something that made her hands shake so violently she dropped the shells again. The trader, a woman called Mama Sayo, looked down at her with eyes that suddenly seemed ancient and knowing. "You saw," the old woman whispered, her voice like dried leaves scraping stone. "You saw what you should not have seen." From that moment, Zainab's life would never be the same. Because in the village of Ekale, some secrets, once witnessed, demand a price. And the price for seeing what lives beneath the surface of ordinary things is always higher than anyone wants to pay. Zainab was born in the settlement of Ekale, a place where the forest pressed close to the compounds, and the river sang songs that older women remembered but younger ones had forgotten. She was the third daughter of a palm wine tapper, a man whose hands were always sticky with sap and whose smile was as warm as afternoon sun. Her mother sold vegetables at the market. Her wrapper always dyed the color of earth, her head wrap tied in the old way that marked her as a woman of tradition. Zainab herself was unremarkable in the way that made people's eyes slide past her without really seeing. Her skin was the color of wet clay, neither dark enough to be called beautiful in the old way, nor light enough to draw the attention of men seeking status. She was thin as bamboo shoots after dry season, her wrapper always a little too loose around her small frame. Her face was plain, with a nose too wide and lips too thin, and eyes that seemed to hold more questions than a young woman should carry. But Zainab had a gift that set her apart from other girls in the village. She could see things, not with her eyes exactly, but with something deeper. Something that lived behind her eyes, in the place where dreams and waking mixed together like palm oil and water that refused to blend. She saw the sickness in the chief's favorite goat 3 days before it died. She saw the lie in her sister's smile the morning before the girl ran away with the trader from the neighboring hamlet. She saw the hunger in the dry season coming, saw it in the way the wind moved through the cassava fields, 2 full moons before the rains failed. The villagers did not know what to make of this gift. The elders whispered that she carried the sight, that old knowing that some women possessed, but most feared. "Keep that girl close," they told her mother. "Such eyes see too much. Too much seeing brings trouble." Her mother nodded and made sure Zainab wore extra beads around her waist, protective charms that clinked softly when she walked. But even charms cannot blind eyes that see what others miss. At 16 harvests, Zainab remained unmarried, while girls younger than her already carried babies on their backs and cooked evening meals for husbands. The young men of Ekala avoided her gaze. "Those eyes," they muttered over palm wine, "those eyes look through you, look into you. A man cannot keep secrets from a woman who sees everything." So Zainab learned to walk with her eyes down, to keep her knowing to herself, to pretend she saw only what others saw. But pretending does not make truth disappear. It only buries it deeper, where it grows roots and weights. That morning at the market began like any other. The sun climbed the sky slowly, as if reluctant to face another day. Women spread their wares on woven mats, their voices rising in the familiar rhythm of bargaining and gossip. Zainab helped her mother arrange yams in careful pyramids, the tubers still cool from storage. The market smelled of smoked fish and palm oil, of fresh peppers, and the sweet rot of overripe plantains. Mama Sayo's trading spot was in the corner where the market met the path to the forest. The old woman sold meat, always meat, fresh meat that appeared in her baskets every morning, though no one ever saw her hunt or trade with hunters. The meat was always good, always tender, always enough. And it sold quickly because hunger makes people ask fewer questions than they should. Zainab's mother sent her to Mama Sayo's mat to buy meat for the evening meal. As she approached, Zainab felt something crawl up her spine like a spider seeking warmth. The air around Mama Sayo's trading spot was different, thicker, as if something invisible pressed down on the space, making it harder to breathe. She was counting out cowrie shells to pay when 3 fell from her palm, bouncing across the mat and rolling beneath the baskets. Zainab bent down to retrieve them, and that was when she saw it. The leather pouch was old, the kind that hunters carried for special purposes, special dark purposes. It lay partially hidden beneath Mama Sayo's mat, and it glowed, not with firelight or sunlight, but with something that came from within, something that pulsed like a heartbeat. Zainab's gift, that terrible seeing, forced her to look closer, and inside the pouch, visible only to eyes like hers, she saw teeth, human teeth, small ones, the kind that belonged to children, and hair, locks of different textures and colors braided together with red thread, and something else, something her mind refused to name but her soul recognized immediately. She looked up, the cowrie shells forgotten in her trembling hand. Mama Sayo was watching her. The old woman's face had changed. Or perhaps it had always been this way, and Zainab was only now seeing it truly. The wrinkles seemed to move like worms beneath the skin. The eyes held depths that went down and down into places where light died screaming. "You saw," Mama Sayo said softly. Around them, the market continued its normal chaos, but Zainab felt as if she and the old woman existed in a bubble of terrible silence. "Few have your gift, child. Few can see what I carry, what I am." Zainab's mouth opened, but no words came. The knowing crashed over her in waves. The meat, the always fresh meat, the children who had disappeared over the years, 3 in the last 5 harvests. The village had blamed wild animals, blamed kidnappers from other settlements, blamed bad spirits, but never this, never this. "What will you do now?" Mama Sayo asked, and in her voice was something that might have been curiosity or might have been threat. "Will you speak of what you have seen? Will you tell the elders, your mother, the chief?" The market women noticed Zainab's stillness. "Girl, are you well?" one called. "You look like you have seen a ghost," another laughed. "Maybe the forest spirits touched her. You know how those strange girls are." Zainab grabbed the meat wrapped in leaves, threw down the cowrie shells, and ran. She ran through the market, her wrapper tangling around her legs, her head wrap coming loose. She ran past the compounds, past the chief's house with its carved wooden posts, past the sacred tree where offerings lay rotting in the heat. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs trembled like leaves in storm wind. 2 days passed. 2 days in which Zainab could not eat, could not sleep, could not speak of what she had seen. Her mother grew worried. "What happened at the market?" she asked, feeling Zainab's forehead for fever. "What did you see?" But Zainab only shook her head, her eyes distant as the horizon. The meat her mother cooked that evening sat untouched on Zainab's mat. She stared at it, and in her mind's eye, she saw the pouch, saw the teeth, saw the terrible truth of what the village had been consuming for years. Her stomach turned over and over like a dying fish. On the 3rd day, a child went missing. Little Olu, the blacksmith's youngest son, who had gone to fetch water from the river and never returned. The village erupted in panic. Mothers counted their children 3 times, 4 times. Men grabbed machetes and spears, forming search parties that combed the forest paths. The women wailed and beat their breasts. "Not another one!" they cried. "Not another child taken!" That evening, Mama Sayo's basket at the market overflowed with fresh meat, more than usual, enough to feed half the village. Zainab watched from her mother's mat as people crowded around the old woman, grateful for the generous portions, grateful for meat to soothe their fear and grief. "At least we can eat well while we search," the men said, wrapping the meat in leaves. "Strength for the hunt tomorrow." The women nodded, already planning the evening meals. And Zainab knew. Her gift showed her the truth with brutal clarity. She saw Olu's bright smile superimposed over the wrapped bundles of meat, saw his small hands that had held hers just last market day, saw what he had become. She vomited behind her mother's compound, heaving until nothing remained but bitter bile. When she straightened, Mama Sayo stood there as if she had materialized from the air itself. "You carry the burden of knowing now," the old woman said, and her voice held no triumph, no cruelty, only a strange kind of inevitability. "Do you understand how this works, child? I do not take them. The village gives them to me. Oh, not deliberately, not knowingly. But they take the meat, they eat the offerings, they feed on what I provide. The transaction is complete whether they acknowledge it or not." "You are evil," Zainab whispered, the words scraping her throat like broken shells. "You are darkness itself." "I am hunger satisfied," Mama Sayo replied. "I am the price of plenty in lean times. I am what the village needs even as it refuses to see what it has invited into its center. And you, with your seeing eyes, you are the only one who can end it. But ending it requires courage you may not possess, requires sacrifice you may not be willing to make." The old woman disappeared into the twilight, leaving Zainab shaking and alone. 3 more moons passed, 3 moons in which Zainab tried to speak but found her tongue frozen in her mouth. She tried to tell her mother, but when she opened her lips, only silence emerged. She tried to tell the elders, but when she approached them under the great tree, her legs would not carry her forward. Some magic held her speech captive, some dark binding that Mama Sayo had placed on her the moment she had seen what she should not have seen. Another child disappeared. This time it was a girl, a Maka, who had been fetching firewood at the forest edge. The village mourned, the village feared, and the village ate the generous portions of meat that Mama Sayo provided the next market day. Zainab grew thinner and thinner until her wrapper hung on her frame like cloth on dried bones. Her mother wept. "My daughter is wasting away. Some curse has touched her." The healer came with his herbs and charms, but nothing helped because the sickness was not in Zainab's body. It was in her soul, in the knowing she carried and could not share. The villagers whispered about her. "That strange girl grows stranger," the women muttered while pounding cassava. "Always watching, always silent, like she carries secrets too heavy for her small body." The young men avoided her more than ever. "She is cursed," they said over palm wine. "A woman who cannot speak what she sees is no use to anyone." On the night of the new moon, when darkness covered Ekale like a burial shroud, Zainab walked into the forbidden forest. She walked past the warnings, past the protective charms tied to trees, past the boundary where safe ended and unknown began. She walked until she found what she sought. The ancient tree stood in a clearing where moonlight should have fallen but did not. Its branches reached up and out like arms frozen in eternal pleading. At its base sat a figure. Not Mama Sayo. Someone older. Something older. She was a woman who might have been beautiful once, in the time before time began. Her hair was white as clouds, her skin dark as the space between stars. She wore no wrapper, only shadows that clung to her like living cloth. Her eyes held the color of storms, and her smile revealed teeth that had forgotten mercy long ago. "You seek answers," the spirit said, her voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "You seek freedom from the burden of knowing. But child, some knowledge cannot be unknown. Some seeing cannot be unsealed. You have looked into darkness, and darkness has looked back into you." Zainab fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face that was thin and haunted. "Please," she begged, "help me stop this. Help me save the children. Help me speak." The spirit regarded her with something that might have been pity or might have been amusement. "Mama Sayo is bound to this village by ancient contract. Long ago, before your grandfather's grandfather drew breath, this settlement made a bargain. Protection from famine, meat in the dry season, plenty when other villages starved. The price was paid in silence, in not seeing, in eating what was provided without question. But the children! Our currency in a transaction the village refuses to acknowledge. To break this contract requires one who sees, one who speaks despite the binding, one who offers herself in place of the voiceless. The spirit leaned forward, and in the darkness, Zainab saw creatures moving behind her, creatures with too many limbs and eyes that wept blood. Are you willing to pay that price, girl who sees too much? Zainab thought of Olu's smile, of Amaka's laugh, of all the children yet to be taken, of the village eating and never understanding what they consumed. And she made her choice. Yes. The spirit reached out with fingers that seemed to multiply as they moved, touching Zainab's forehead. Pain exploded behind her eyes, pain like lightning striking inside her skull. She screamed, and in that scream, the binding shattered. She ran back to the village, ran with strength she did not know she possessed. She ran straight to the chief's compound and pounded on the carved posts until her hands bled. "Wake up," she shrieked. "Wake up and see what lives among you." The village gathered, confused, frightened, angry at being disturbed in the deep of night. The chief emerged, his wrapper hastily tied, his face twisted with irritation. "What madness is this?" And Zainab spoke. She spoke of the pouch beneath Mama Sayo's mat. She spoke of the teeth and hair. She spoke of meat that came from nowhere and everywhere. She spoke until her voice went hoarse, until her throat bled from the force of words too long held silent. The villagers stared. Some faces showed horror dawning like terrible sunrise. Others showed denial so fierce it bordered on violence. "She lies!" someone shouted. "The girl has gone mad." But the mothers who had counted their children over and over, the mothers whose arms still ached with phantom weight of babies taken, they knew. They heard the truth in Zainab's breaking voice and recognized it. "Search her trading place," Zainab gasped. "Search it now, before she can hide what she is." The chief, moved by something he saw in Zainab's eyes, or perhaps by his own buried knowing, called for torches. The village moved as one toward the market, toward the corner where Mama Sayo's mat lay abandoned in darkness. They found the pouch exactly where Zainab described. The chief opened it with shaking hands. And what he saw there made him drop it immediately, made him turn away with hand over mouth, made him vomit into the dust. The warriors who had fought in tribal wars, who had seen death in many forms, looked into that pouch and wept. The healers who had touched every manner of wound and sickness looked and understood in one terrible instant. "What have we been eating?" a woman whispered. "Oh, ancestors, what have we been eating?" Mama Sayo appeared at the edge of the torchlight. She no longer looked like a harmless old traitor. She looked like what she truly was, something that had worn human shape for so long it had almost forgotten it was only a costume. "You have broken the contract," she said, and her voice made the flames flicker and die. "You have named what should not be named, seen what should remain unseen. So be it. The protection is lifted. The bargain is void. Let us see how your village fares without my provisions. Let us see how many children survive the coming famine without the plenty I provided. We will starve before we touch what you offer ever again," the chief shouted, his voice shaking but determined. "Leave this place. Leave and never return. We will take our chances with honest hunger over cursed satisfaction." Mama Sayo looked at Zainab, really looked at her, and in that gaze was respect and rage mixed together. "You have courage, girl who sees, but courage always has a cost. You have saved your village from one darkness, but darkness has many forms, and now it knows your name." She walked into the forest, and as she did, Her form began to change, to stretch, to reveal what had always hidden beneath the human skin. The villagers looked away, unable to bear witnessing what unfolded in the shadows. When they looked back, she was gone, gone as if she had never been. But they all knew she had been very real. The pouch remained. The evidence remained. The truth remained. The village burned Mama Sayo's trading place, burned her mat and baskets and the clay pots that had held unspeakable provisions. They burned it all and scattered the ashes into the river, begging the water to carry the contamination away. The healer performed cleansing rituals that lasted 7 days and 7 nights. Mothers held their remaining children close and wept for those who were gone. Gone in a way that made burial impossible, that made mourning something twisted and terrible. And Zainab? Zainab was changed. The spirit had not lied about the cost of speaking. Her gift of seeing grew stronger, grew until she could no longer close it off. She saw the guilt in the faces of those who had eaten most eagerly. She saw the denial in those who still refused to believe. She saw the slow starvation that came in the next dry season, the honest hunger that Mama Sayo had warned would come. Children cried for food. Adults grew thin as harvest stalks, but they survived. They survived on roots and sparse game and the kindness of neighboring settlements who shared what little they had. The elders made Zainab their seer, the one who watched for dangers both seen and unseen. Young men no longer avoided her gaze. They sought her counsel, respected her sight, understood that her gift had saved them all, even as it had cost them their comfortable ignorance. Zainab never married. Her gift made intimacy impossible, made the small lies that hold relationships together transparent and unbearable. She lived alone at the edge of the village, in a hut decorated with protective charms and visited by those seeking truth in a world that preferred beautiful deceptions. Years passed. The children who had been taken were never forgotten. The village erected a memorial at the market's center, 7 stones, 1 for each child taken, each stone painted with the symbols of innocence stolen, and beside it they placed a warning carved into wood. Question what you consume. See what you are fed. Not all provision comes from places of light. On quiet nights, when wind moved through Ekele's compounds, some swore they heard Mama Sayo's voice laughing in the darkness, reminding them that bargains once made leave scars that never fully heal, that hunger comes in many forms, that the most dangerous monsters are the ones we invite to our tables and refuse to see even as they consume us from within. Zainab grew old in service to her gift, her hair turning white as cotton, her body bent like the ancient tree in the forbidden forest. But her eyes remained sharp, remained seeing, remained watchful. And when she finally died, the village mourned her as they mourned few others, understanding that she had carried a burden no one should carry alone, the burden of seeing truth when everyone else chose blindness, of speaking when silence would have been easier, of sacrifice when self-preservation whispered louder. They buried her with honor, with all the proper rituals, with prayers that her spirit would find rest in the place where seers go when their watching is finally done. And beside her grave, they planted a tree, not the type that grows twisted and dark, but one that bears fruit, sweet fruit that feeds without cost, that nourishes without taking, that gives without demanding payment in innocence and blood. And so the village of Ekele learned that sometimes the most precious gift is the one that shows you what you do not want to see, that saves you from yourself, that breaks the comfortable patterns built on foundations of buried horror. They learned that true seeing demands courage, that speaking truth requires sacrifice, and that the price of willful blindness is always, always paid by those who have no voice to protest their own consumption. The end.